Welcome to another Memphis Monday 139, making a fishing pole rack. I was over talking to my neighbor, and I told him I didn't have any interesting projects. I'm working on this folding camp stool, but we've already done that before, so I was kind of looking for a new project we'd never done before. And human nature, they'll never ask you to do anything, but if you ask them, they'll mention it. And in this case, they told me, well, you can just make me a fishing pole rack to store this gaggle of fishing poles I got laying around here. And I said, roger that. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. But we're not going to get anything done unless we do what? That's right. We need to knock off the chit-chat and get to work. And I'm over at my neighbor's house. Here's the fishing poles they were talking about. I think I'm going to put a drawer in it too to fit that fishing box in. Well, I am sprayed with some of his fishing poles. And give me a good selection to size this thing, and I want to make it big enough that I can put a fishing box in some kind of a drawer or shelf or compartment in it. Here's the design I've come up with. The base would be a cabinet with these uprights, and then across the top will be the top rest, which will look like this. It'll have 12 notches in it to receive the fishing poles. Here I got the fishing poles leaned. This is the bottom rest. It has 12 holes cut into that top piece of wood there. Most complicated part of this build is the sides, because it's going to take 3 rabbets and a dado. You need a rabbet along the side of the top. It's going to be 3/4 by 3/8. A dado across the inside will be 3/4 by 3/8. The bottom will take a dado just like the top. That'll receive the bottom, and then the back will take a 1/4 inch dado by 3/8. That'll receive the back. So let's get to it. Here's my setup. I'm just going to use a fence, and it's paint by numbers. I'll just put a dado here. A rabbit here, a dado here. And let's see if this works. Put the dado in, which will serve as the top of the drawer. Okay, same deal here. I got it set up. I want my dado right down through here. And I didn't even measure it because it's really arbitrary where this is, as long as this drawer space is big enough. And then I'll leave my setup in place to do the other one, and they'll be exactly the same. I have our little cabinet mocked up here so I don't get squirrely. This interior board here, it's the same length as the top and bottom, but it needs to be about a 1/4 inch narrower so that the bottom will fit in here. And the next job is to put a rabbet on the inside of the top, the bottom, and the sides to receive the back. Got my setup done for the rabbets, and I ran a test piece. So There's my rabbet. It'll fit, the back will fit in that rabbet just like that. Let me show you my setup. I got the blade set up about 3/8 of an inch, and it's 1/4 of an inch out from the sacrificial fence. Time to do a little assembly. I'm using 16 gauge brads and glue, 1.5 inches. And there's our little rabbet all the way around. And this piece of wood here is set back 3/8 of an inch so that our bottom will fit in just like this. Now, these bottoms, you can put them in loose or put them in tight. I'm putting them in for strength, so I'm gluing it and using these tiny little staples here. I got my air compressor turned down to about 80 pounds. Here's our little cabinet. What we got to do now is trim it out and put a face front on it so we can put the drawer in, and we got to drill 12 holes in the top. Let's drill the holes first. I'm going to trim it out in cedar. I may make the pole rest out of the cedar too if I have enough. And I'm going to finish it in some kind of pine stain. What I'm doing here is putting in the drawer slides. I need to do that so I can know how wide to make the drawer. Now, notionally, they tell you how wide these things are, but I find it easier to install the drawer sides and then take a measurement. Another thing I like to do is, after I get the drawer slides in, is cut a piece of plywood or something to confirm that my box is square and I know the exact dimensions of that drawer. I haven't put box joints in a drawer for a while, so I just did the test piece here. Seems to be okay. I got to set up on my saw. Let's go ahead and cut them. I'm also using the remember those panels we made a couple of months ago? I'm going to go ahead and use them in this the pine panels in this drawer. Well, it squared up pretty nice. Okay, so let's let this glue dry, and we'll put the bottom on it and we'll be on a roll. Okay, the bottom is going to be a 1/2-inch plywood. I didn't put a dado in here like I usually do because I want maximum space inside the drawer. It's going to be stapled with 1/2-inch staples and glued all the way around the edge. PSI is set at 95. Now we're going to fix, we're going to fit the drawer to the cabinet. And what I've done is I've put some remnants in here that are the correct thickness, 1/2 inch. That will give me the correct spacing off the bottom. This is the acid test here. After all that work, go fiddle with it and it doesn't fit. That's a bad thing. Here's a close-up that kind of shows you why I go to all the trouble with the spacers and all that stuff. See how that side of the drawer comes exactly up with that drawer guide? And that's all she wrote. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I'm making the box out of 3/4 inch marine plywood, and I'm making the drawer front out of 3/4 inch marine plywood also, and I'm trimming it with cedar trim. Well, that about does it for our little box. Nice little drawer. Box joints. Next thing we're going to do is the actual fishing pole rest. Now we're going to Memphisize that quite a bit, so stay tuned. Here's a mock-up of the pole rack I have in mind. It'll be pine stanchions with cross piece here. The poles up here will be held in place by these little keepers here. And this bar up here will be this dowel. On these stanchions, what I'll do is I'll round over the outside edge here down all the way on the outside, and I'll do the inside from just the top of the bottom rest to the top. But before I do any of the round over, I'll put a radius in this, the top up here, and drill an 1 1/4 inch hole through the stanchion. I've decided to put the hole at the center of the radius. Okay, I got it mocked up here again. The dowel will go through the two stanchions, and then these little keepers will actually be driven in at an angle to match the angle that the pole meets the upper rest. I'm holding the stanchion, connecting the stanchion with glue and screws. Now I got it flipped over, and I'm attaching the wheels. Without wheels, this thing would just be an obstruction. It'd be always in the way. They're going to keep it under their carport, and so the thing needs to really be mobile. Well, that's what we got so far. Let's finish her up. I'm holding this crossbar dowel in with a screw. Now I could just put a little dab of glue on there, but someday somebody will want to work on this thing, and if this thing is glued in place, you'd have to tear it apart to work on it. And notice I'm putting these little keepers in at an angle because my fishing poles are at an angle. This is stuff called Puritan pine. I've never used it before. I've used Ipswich pine, but it's the first time I ever used this. I really like it. I swear I'm going to make another project out of pine just because I like this color. I'm finishing our project up with spar urethane. Looks like. Well, there's our little fishing pole rack with their little unique brass holders at the top, made out of marine plywood with cedar trim, and the stanchions are made out of pine. The whole thing is stained with a pine stain and finished with a spar urethane. Well, that does it for another Memphis Monday. Memphis Monday 139, making a fishing pole rack. I think it turned out pretty nice. Got a nice little drawer. Made it out of, it's going to be out in the carport, so I made it out of marine plywood and cedar and pine, and finished it in spar urethane. One of the interesting features, I think, is we used some little black brass catchers on the top. I haven't seen those things used on any of the examples I saw on the internet. But anyway, like and favorite and comment and all that stuff you do on the internet. But most important, make sure you're back here next week for another exciting Memphis Monday. Thanks for playing along.